The March 2024 sales data is out, and there are three really important numbers that you need to understand that tells us what's going on in today's housing market. First is going to be supply. So supply is at 1.8 months, which is actually up just over 12% from last year. But the next number is going to tell us a little bit more about that. Our average sales price increased by about 3.4%, up to $341,117. So that means that while we actually have a few more houses being sold, that the sales price continues to climb because there's still a lack of supply on the market. Typically, we want to see that supply number closer to 6 months, and we're still under 2, which means that we have a supply and demand issue, which is why that average sales price is going up. Next important number is that pending sales are actually up as well. And this just reiterates the fact that while supply has slowly grown, there's also more buyers on the market than there are houses available. So we're seeing prices continue to climb a little bit as we see competition in the market, especially in what we kind of consider our first-time buyer pool, which I would consider somewhere in that 350 and below mark these days. That number continues to climb because there's just not enough houses, and especially the new construction being built does not usually fall into that price range. That new construction market, typically, depending on what area you're in, is going to start in that 400 and above. Sometimes you'll find things lower than that, depending on some of our outlying suburbs, but most of the time, new construction is going to fall in those higher price points. Now, if you are in those higher price points, so you're in that 400 and above kind of price range, we have seen things slow ever so slightly, but things are still moving relatively quickly. Homes that are priced well and marketed well are still selling quickly and for good money at asking price, or oftentimes more, especially again in that lower price point. Houses in the upper price points that are priced well are still moving relatively quickly, despite what we see in our interest rate market, which hasn't been the most buyer friendly. And in the short term, I don't see that changing too much, especially as inflation numbers continue to not be ideal for what the Fed is looking for there. Now, the most important thing I can tell you is that supply and demand is always going to determine what happens in our housing market. And as long as our demand is outstripping our supply, we're going to continue to see prices climb. And in Kansas City, and I cannot stress this enough, in Kansas City, we need to understand those local numbers, not the national numbers, because national numbers are going to skew that data for us. But in Kansas City especially, our demand is outstripping our supply in a massive way, because we've been underbuilt for a number of years, and builders have not continued to build in the price points where most buyers enter the market. Those first-time buyers generally aren't going to buy $500,000-$600,000 houses. Most of them are going to buy in that 350 and below market, and that's going to really continue to drive those prices up and create more and more competition. So the biggest takeaway I can give you is understand supply and demand. And right now, demand is outstripping supply, meaning prices are going to continue to climb as long as something major doesn't happen to cut back on that demand. So what does that mean for you? Let's have a deeper conversation about whether buying or selling right now might be the right choice. And the best advice I always give people: buy in a price range in a house that feels comfortable for you, and don't let interest rates or what else is going on dictate what you're paying. Don't spend too much on a house. Stay in a comfort range for your monthly payment. And that way, as things change, you're kind of locked in the short term. And down the road, as your home's equity builds, you might be able to use that in your next house, might be able to use it to upgrade your current home. Lots of factors, but the most important thing is to get into the game if you're a first-time home buyer. Now, if you're thinking about downsizing, that's a deeper conversation. And there might be some ways for us to mitigate the interest rate market as you consider moving into a new home that might fit your needs a little bit better than your current state. If you have more questions about what that looks like for you, please give me a call or send me a text message. I would love to have that conversation. The biggest mistake I see home buyers and sellers make is waiting too long to get good advice on what's going on. They think that what they read in the news and the media is the best advice they can get. And that's generally not true, because it oftentimes does not compensate for what's happening in our local market. So if you have questions, give me a call, shoot me a text. Would love to chat with you and make sure that you have the right plan in place to get you where you're going.